A woman on her daily run, gone without a trace.
A lot of missing persons are never found. They vanish. Nobody ever hears from them.
An exhaustive search gets underway.
Everything could be important. You have to follow every single lead.
Will a maze of clues lead to the missing woman?
We were stuck back again with nowhere to go.
And uncover what happened to Ronda Cleaver. One morning in Boone County, Missouri, a 911 call comes in. A kindergarten teacher named Ronda Cleaver hasn't shown up at school, and no one's answering the phone at her house.
Co-workers thought that it was extremely unusual for her to miss work, to be late, certainly without calling. So they were really concerned and wanted Sheriff's Department officers to check the house and see if she was all right.
Rhonda's husband, Hank, a medical student, is called home to meet with investigators.
I remembered the look on the deputy's face when I drove up, and it was kind of a worried look. He was a real caring man, and I think he suspected that something was really wrong.
Hank can't think of any reason for Ronda to go missing on purpose. Their marriage is a happy one, he says, but they are new to the area, and Rhonda's gotten lost before.
Oddly enough, she went out for her walk the night before, too close to when it was dark, and she got lost. She was gone for an hour and a half, and it was very unlike her, and she was so scared. I thought, well, maybe that happened to her again.
If Rhonda's in trouble, every second counts. The first thing to do is retrace her steps.
Whatever happened, the first few hours is always critical. Now, this house here is where the whole investigation started. We know that she left that house around 7:30 in the morning and is jogging west on Obermiller Road here. Now, we had people on the corner that saw her turn onto O'Neill Road, which takes her a little bit more into a secluded area.
Rhonda's route leads to a creek 2 miles from her house.
Our last witness sees her jogging toward the bridge. Once she gets to the bridge, she vanishes. We checked the entire area. We checked both sides of the creek, checked the creek banks, found no signs of a struggle. Nothing indicated she was injured or had left the roadway here at all. She just absolutely vanishes.
George Duker has been at this kind of crossroads before. As a veteran cop, he's investigated hundreds of missing persons cases.
After the first 24 hours have passed and a preliminary search turns up nothing, you then have to ask, are they endangered or have they been abducted?
In any abduction case, the longer time goes, the more difficult it is to find that person, and probably the more unlikely it is that we're going to find that person alive.
Rescue teams fan out from the place Ronda was last seen.
We went out and started searching roadways, searching fields, looking for anything that might have caused her to injure herself, get lost in a strange area, anything of that nature.
But there's no sign of Ronda anywhere. Late that afternoon, her husband goes on TV to ask the public for help.
She frightens very easily. She's a tiny person, and she couldn't resist much.
How do you?
I'm scared. Real scared.
You have to go back and look at the life of that missing person. You have to examine their routines, their habits, their schedule, to see if there's anything in there that might give you a clue as to where they may be now.
The investigation picks up at Rhonda's school.
She have any problems? Was she reliable? She show up to work on time?
Yeah, she was very reliable. We could count on her.
Nothing suspicious turns up at the kindergarten.
Here's a woman with a good job, a good family, what appears to be a good life on the surface. But under the surface, you don't really know what's going on. she might have a reason why she'd want to disappear.
We spoke to family members, husband, anybody we could think of that might have a clue as to what happened to her. There was nothing that would be consistent with her just disappearing.
But there is a haunting clue in the neighborhood. Sergeant Tom Redden has nothing to do with the search for Ronda Cleaver, but he knows something that will blow the case wide open. Ronda Cleaver was last seen near a bridge a few miles from her home in Missouri. 24 hours after her disappearance, the investigation is at a standstill. But a shocking discovery is about to turn this case upside down. Sergeant Tom Redden with the Missouri Missing Persons Unit knows something that will rock the investigation to the core.
Ronda Cleaver lived right next door to another woman who had gone missing.
Her name was Susan Davis, and her disappearance is still a mystery. Susan vanished exactly a year ago, leaving her 2 young children and all her possessions behind.
When you have a second disappearance within the same community, you have to start thinking there may be a link between the two. Perhaps one person is responsible for both disappearances.
Susan's car, a red Ford Escort, is also missing. Her husband Ralph claims she ran off with another man. No one believes him.
Our instinct was, what did Ralph do to her? That's what we felt all along. Then 1 year later, Ronda Cleaver, in the residence right next door to Ralph, comes up missing also. Ralph was obviously very high on our list of suspects as to someone who might have done harm or caused a problem with Ronda Cleaver.
When they compare notes on the 2 missing women, there's plenty of cause for alarm. Ralph Davis has a history of domestic violence.
She's got some pretty good bruises on her arms there.
Could he also have something to do with Ronda Cleaver?
So here's Susan and here's Rhonda. Got 2 women close to the same age. In fact, they look pretty much alike. They're both thin and they're both about the same age. They could almost be sisters looking in these 2 pictures.
Yeah.
Men who target women often have a type, a certain type that they go after.
Ralph Davis is put under close surveillance. Just a few days have gone by, so there's still a chance Rhonda's alive. When an anonymous tip comes in, the investigation swings into high gear.
We received information Ronda might be being held in an isolated area, wooded area, possibly a cave.
When you have a missing person case, there's no central crime scene. Everything could be important. You have to follow every single lead.
We began in earnest then searching those areas and those caves in hopes that we could possibly find Ronda alive.
It's a rough search, but there's no time to lose.
There are lots of caves like this in this area. We came to this cave looking for campsites, ropes, clothing, anything that might have indicated that someone was held against their will. These tunnels, these caves could go on for miles and miles.
But nothing turns up, and when the tip is discovered to be a cruel hoax, the search is called off.
It was frustrating the information didn't pan out because now the investigation was stalled out again. There was no other information to follow up on.
For now, the only thing to do is to keep a close eye on the prime suspect. As the surveillance of Ralph Davis continues, a lead comes in that takes the investigation in a whole new direction.
Yes, we'll send an officer to take a report. Can I get your name, please?
A driver who passed Rhonda on the road that morning now remembers something else.
He saw a pickup truck parked near the bridge, and an individual, a white man, about 30 years of age or so, wearing camouflage clothing.
Even if he doesn't turn out to be a suspect, at least he could be a witness. He was the last one, perhaps, to see her at that location.
A sketch artist comes up with a likeness. Could this man be the key to finding Ronda Cleaver? The search for Ronda Cleaver has entered week 2 when a possible new witness emerges.
Witnesses say they saw the man standing on the
Now,
bridge.
all they have to do is find him.
The sheriff's department says it hopes the man can provide some clues into her disappearance.
We put the flyer up all around town and got a lot of calls about people that resemble the sketch. We got one anonymous call identifying a guy named Larry Solomon who lived in this area.
Hopefully, Solomon can help crack the case. A quick background check reveals that Larry Solomon is 30 years old, married, and works in a local craft store. He's also known for hunting turkey with a .22 caliber rifle.
At the time, Larry Solomon lived in this area in a trailer with his wife. We came out and talked to him. He looked an awful lot like the composite, but there were things that didn't match either. He said he was hunting that morning in a farm up north of town.
Nowhere near the bridge. The promising witness turns out to be a big disappointment.
Missing person cases can be really frustrating. You follow all these leads, you can't crack the case. Some leads are good, some leads are not so good. And then you get that one lead, that one thing that takes you somewhere where you can get some answers to your questions.
Over a year has gone by with no movement in the Ronda Cleaver case. Then, surveillance turns up a startling new clue. Hopefully, this will be the break everyone's been waiting for.
We found out that Ralph Davis had a storage unit rented that we didn't know about throughout the investigation.
If Davis has a secret, it could be hiding here. The search begins for any evidence linking him to either or both disappearances.
When we opened up the storage unit, we found what we'd been looking for, Susan Davis's car. Ralph had always asserted that Susan had left with the car and that he had no knowledge of where the car was.
One look at the vehicle, and it's easy to see why Davis lied.
We found the window was blown out and inside what looked like bloodstains.
Shotgun pellets are retrieved from the car's interior, along with blood, facial bone, and tissue samples. There's only one explanation.
Someone had been shot with a shotgun in the face, and it would have caused their death.
But who? Was it Ralph's wife, Susan? Or could Ronda Cleaver have been the victim?
We were able to take the blood and determine that the DNA was consistent with Sue Davis's blood, based on studies comparing them with her children. And so we were able to come to the conclusion that in this car, Sue Davis received a fatal gunshot wound to her head and was dead.
Even without a body, the forensic evidence is enough to convict Ralph Davis of his wife's murder. He gets the death sentence. But the Cleaver case is still unresolved.
When Ralph Davis was convicted of the killing of his wife, he continued to deny any involvement in Ronda Cleaver's disappearance, and we were stuck back again with nowhere to go in learning what happened to Ronda Cleaver.
When you investigate cases, sometimes they intersect with other cases. You develop information that might, in fact, solve that other case, but yet here you are, still left with your case to be solved.
When Davis is executed, the investigation into Ronda Cleaver's disappearance is at a dead end once again. 3 years after Ronda Cleaver went out for that fateful morning jog, a couple who know nothing about the case decide to explore an abandoned farm a few miles north of town. The old cellar has been empty for as long as anyone can remember. Or has it?
He went down into the cellar, and all of a sudden he said, "I found something."
It's been 3 years since the disappearance of Ronda Cleaver. All hope of solving the case seems lost when a couple exploring an abandoned farm makes an unexpected discovery.
And he was down there a little bit, and I heard him say something. And then I heard him say, I found bones.
At first glance, it looks like the remains of a large animal. But then he takes a closer look.
I trained as a medic in the military, and I work in the hospital. So when I really looked at the bones, I knew that it was they were human bones because of the shape of the jaw.
Did an innocent early morning run end up on this abandoned farm? Dental records quickly ID the victim as Ronda Cleaver. The missing persons case is over, but the hunt for a killer has just begun.
Once we found the body of Miss Cleaver, I immediately thought of Larry Solomon.
A bullet hole at the base of the skull confirms that Ronda was killed with a .22 caliber rifle.
When you get new information in a case, you gotta take a step back and look, because maybe there was something you found out earlier in the case that didn't make sense. Now with this new information, it all makes sense.
We went back and looked at our reports, looked at the information we had Larry Solomon talking to investigators saying, "I was on that farm where Ronda Cleaver was killed the same day that she disappeared."
Larry Solomon, the man on the bridge, the turkey hunter with the .22 caliber rifle. Solomon is arrested, and his ex-wife turns over some damning evidence.
She gave us some tape recordings. On one of these tape recordings was Larry Solomon in his own voice describing the abduction and murder of Ronda Cleaver.
7:30 a.m. This girl is jogging along the road. It's a secluded stretch of road. Nobody around for miles. She should have more sense than that. What I feel like doing is to pull right up alongside her, jump out and grab her.
It gave a whole new perspective to be able to listen to the killer in his own words talk about the abduction.
Confronted by the evidence, Solomon quickly confesses. In exchange for his guilty plea, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison.
To me, to know that Ronda would have been dead from the beginning and was taken care of in heaven was an easier thing to face than that she would still be alive and hurt somewhere.
This is not the way you want a missing persons case to end. But at least in this case, investigators were able to bring it to a successful conclusion and bring to justice the person responsible for her death.
A lot of missing persons are never found. They vanish. Nobody ever hears from them again. Nobody has any idea whatever happened to them. In this particular case, we were able to find out what happened to Miss Cleaver. Is it a happy ending? No. But it's a successful conclusion to this investigation.